Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I am your narrator, Captain Tristan McGrath. It is my honor and privilege to welcome you all to the United States Air Force Missing Man Memorial at Joint Base Pearl Harbor Hickam for Technical Sergeant Charles McAllister's retirement ceremony. For your convenience, I will announce the main events of the ceremony prior to their occurrence. Presiding over this ceremony is Rear Admiral Robert P. Hayes, the Director of Joint Interagency Task Force West. Ladies and gentlemen, please stand for the entrance of the official party and remain standing for the playing of the national anthem and the invocation. The invocation will now be given by Chaplain Justin Zecker, joining the ceremony via Zoom from Maine. He is stationed at Joint Base Langley, Eustis, Virginia.
Of life and giver of hope, we thank you for this occasion that we celebrate today, the retirement of Tech Sergeant Chase McAllister, and truly the retirement of Lisa Gonzalez. It is truly a blessing to be here. Retirement isn't guaranteed, and less than 1% of Americans actually achieve it. As we know, God, every good gift comes from you. So we pause before we officially retire Chase. We thank you for bringing the McAllister family this far. Through all the ups, through all the downs, through all the many journeys, the twists and turns, God, you were there the entire time. I pray that you help Chase to look back on his career with pride and satisfaction of a job well done. I know that he has touched many lives, personally and professionally, in all that he has done, God. I pray for Chase and for Lisa and for Chloe as they begin the next phase of their life, a phase that they've already started. I know your calling is upon his life, Lord, and I pray that he takes that calling and runs with it as he's doing right now. And I know that he's going to stay there and continue to serve and minister and take care of our youth of the military, Lord Jesus. And I just pray your hand on him in this endeavor, dear God. Thank you again for this moment that we have. Thank you again for Chase, for the friendship that he gives to so many, for the leadership and for the mentorship that he's provided along the years. Thank you for the safety that you have provided, and thank you for such a great family that has supported him along the way. We love you and give you thanks. We ask all these things in your holy name, Lord Jesus. Amen.
Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. Recognition of members who are retiring from a career of long, faithful, and honorable service is one of the oldest traditions of military service. Each retiree should leave the service with a tangible expression of appreciation for their contribution to the military and with the assurance that they will continue to be a member of the military family in retirement. We'd like to thank each of you in attendance, whether here in person or viewing the ceremony virtually. We'd like to especially recognize Technical Sergeant McAllister's family in attendance, including his wife, Mrs. Lisa Jo McAllister, his daughter, Chloe, and his parents, Mrs. Pat McAllister, in attendance with us here, and Mr. Charlie McAllister, joining us virtually from East Peoria, Illinois. We'll now hear from the Director of Joint Interagency Task Force West, Rear Admiral Robert P. Hayes.
Well, good morning and aloha. Welcome to a very special day and event celebrating the 20 years of service of Tech Sergeant McAllister. But you may think you're the VIP today, but the real VIPs are over there. So Lisa and Chloe, thanks for being here today, for supporting your dad, and Mom, Pat, and your dad back in Illinois. Thanks for being able to participate. I realize in this COVID environment, it's a challenge for all of us. That's represented here by, we normally have maybe one or two more people or a few more than that. But we've got to be a little bit distant, spread out here, and that also limits some of our travel options. But thanks so much for being here today, because it's as much about you, and I hope you're going to get an appreciation for what your husband, what your dad, and what your son has done over the last 20 years today. Because if he's like me, when you do intel work a lot of your career, you don't always talk a lot about it. You kind of just put it in a box and you keep it at work. So we're going to open up that box a little bit today and give you a little peek into what he did. And he might even divulge a few things within the confines of not revealing any trade secrets or anything like that. So Tech Sergeant McAllister, I think I've probably done 20, 25 of these. First time I've done somebody not in the Coast Guard. So thank you for the privilege of being part of your ceremony today. And I really mean that. This is a distinct honor for me to join you on your last day working in the military. And I think what's neat about this is you look around, you see a Marine, Air Force, Coast Guard, Army, Navy. So you've got, outside of the new Space Force, I guess Space Force is under Air Force. So we've got all the services represented here, and that's kind of a neat aspect of how we work together, train together, fight together, etc. So every one of us comes to the military has a story. You know, the chaplain mentioned that about 1% of our citizens actually serve in the military, and then a few lesser percentage that actually make it to 20 years. So I know you're going to talk more about it, but yours starts in a small town in Illinois. Like a lot of us, we come from a small town. I'm told, you told me this, you had potential managerial potential, I think, at one point, maybe a career with CVS, but that wasn't sure what you wanted. Similarly, I think when you met Lisa, she was a manager in training at Pizza Hut. So, you know, this is years later, we could be talking about two very successful CEOs running portions of large international corporations, but instead we're talking about God had other plans for you, I guess, and instead we're talking about the culmination of a military career that we celebrate today, and then transitioning to a youth ministry career. So Mom and Dad, Lisa and Chloe, I hope that today you're as proud of your son, your husband, your father, as he is of you. And I'm sure that's the case, because I know that to be the case for me, and I'm sure he's going to express a little bit of that maybe he hasn't expressed over the years, his gratitude for how you raised him, Pat and Charles, and Lisa and Chloe, how you supported him as he served our country, as he deployed, as he just day to day carried out a bunch of different missions. So years ago, 2001, you raised your right hand for the first time. You volunteered to serve your country, and that meant surrendering certain individual rights and decisions, right? We kind of get told what to wear, where to go, when to show up, when to leave, what to do, sometimes where to deploy. Needs of the service is what we call it in our service. I don't know if that's what the Air Force calls it as well. So in part that meant moving to various duty stations, as well as deploying to distant countries and hazardous locations. So in a 20-year career, he was stationed in Nebraska, Ohio, South Korea, Hawaii, Louisiana, and then back here in Hawaii. Did I get that right? Okay, all right. Additionally, he had separate extended deployments to Iraq, Kandahar, Afghanistan, and to, you pronounce it Qatar or Qatar, or how do you pronounce it?
I say Qatar.
Qatar, yeah. I think there's a little bit of disagreement on how you, so we'll say Qatar here. Were those on your bucket list growing up in Illinois?
No, sir.
Did you have found them on a map growing up in Illinois before you joined the military? No, but now you can, right? Now you're a global traveler and you know all about going all over the world. I would say over a military career, we all accumulate a good number of stories and anecdotes, sometimes maybe even a cool nickname or call sign. The stories typically get better the more they are told, and kind of more enhanced the more they're told. if less believable at times. In the Coast Guard, we call those sea stories. I'm not sure what they call it. What do you call them in the Air Force?
I don't know, sir.
You know, okay, all right. We'll probably hear some of those in your remarks. And as far as nicknames, I think the Air Force and aviators in general have the market cornered on call signs and stuff like that. And I think we'll talk about your call sign today as well. Do you know what his call sign is? No? Okay, you're going to find out here in a few minutes. So let's talk a few stories about his career. Obviously, I don't know your career as well as you do. You'll embellish on that quite a bit more. So Tech Sergeant McAllister, soft spot in my heart. He's an intelligence professional. That's what I've done most of my career. So I can appreciate the training he's gone through and the rigor that he's gone through to understand how to do intelligence analysis, how to do targeting, how to brief people. And he's done that for pretty much his career in a full range of, like I said, analysis, briefing, targeting, force protection, even training and readiness and oversight, and collection activities, which is what he did for us at JOTF West the last 3 years. He supported missions as wide-ranging as combat, force protection, and anti-terrorism, disaster response. I think we talked about you supporting the earthquake and tsunami in Japan about 9 years ago, and counter narcotics during his last one. So that's quite a broad sweep of missions that you probably had no exposure to some of them before you joined the military, before you joined the Air Force. And then even briefing senior people like flag officers who need you to keep it very simple, use monosyllabic words, and not introduce great concepts there. So usually that's reserved for more senior people, but I think we talked about it your first assignment as an E3. You were briefing flag officers right out the get-go, so that's a pretty great experience and trait to have at that level. So for us, we had the benefit of enjoying his expertise in the field of intelligence collection management, which is essentially what are the questions you need, what are the information you need, and then marrying up those questions, those gaps with people or systems or sensors or platforms that can go out and gather that, and knowing how to ask those questions where you're trying to get a human to collect it, a satellite to collect it, or some other platform to take a picture of it. So there's a lot that goes into being an expert on that. And in a big theater like this, there's no guarantee that you're going to get your question answered because we're competing against a lot of people want to know about what's China doing, what's North Korea doing, what is country X doing. And in this job, the last 3 years, we're trying to find out what are drug smugglers doing, what are criminal organizations doing. But we had a pro on our staff who understood how do I work that system, how do I game that system sometimes to get my prioritization elevated so that we can get the collection and get the information that we wanted. Talked about call signs. Again, pilots and aviators, they love to have these cool nicknames. Sometimes it's an exaggeration, sometimes in the opposite way of a character or a physical trait, like calling a big guy tiny or something like that. Sometimes a reflection of how badly they've screwed up something in their career, or a play on their name or personality. So if you've seen the movie Top Gun years ago, those of you who are my age probably remember Top Gun, mid-80s, probably before you were born, I'm thinking, Jay, maybe?
I think it was 82, sir, when I was born.
Okay, yeah, I think it was maybe a couple years after that. So you've seen that, so you remember like Maverick, Iceman, and Goose. Recent Secretary of Defense, General Mattis, his nickname was Chaos, his call sign. And people thought that was because he liked to inflict chaos on other people, but it actually was his own staff kind of making fun of him when he was a colonel, and he kept have these new ideas, and the staff, Chaos stood for Colonel has another outstanding suggestion. And it was kind of a mocking, like, yeah, another outstanding suggestion, here we go. So, all right, enough about other people. Let's talk about you. This is your ceremony. So you said you don't know what his call sign is? He never told you, okay. So it's Xerox. Okay, you did remember that. Okay, all right. And he got that from his tour when he was in Korea. I don't know about you. That doesn't sound like a very original call sign, right? That sounds like he copied it from somebody else. All right, good. I got one laugh there. All right, that's good. But the real story is they had an exercise and they ran out of paper. And supply was running low, and it's like, oh my gosh, it's going to come to a screeching halt. How do we print out all this? Because in an exercise, you're printing out message traffic and op orders and all kinds of stuff you're probably going through reams of paper like every shift, every watch. Creative guy here. Hey, let's flip the paper over and print on the backside. So even back then, he was pretty ecologically savvy, creative, save money. But maybe also meant you were so good at your job, you were a machine, right? So we'll go with that. So, all right. Oh, she's not laughing at me, laughing at the flag there. Okay, all right. So I tried to collect some information on you, do my collection management, put some feelers out there, try to get some embarrassing stories about you. But to be honest, there really aren't that many embarrassing stories about you out there. It's like most people are like, nah, he's actually a good guy, pretty clean living, hangs out at the church a lot. You know, I was kind of hoping for something like, yeah, remember that time he took down our whole IT system, or he did this or that. So unfortunately, if you came here looking for a lot of entertainment and embarrassment about Chase, you're not going to find that today. But we got a few good stories here. So I told you we're working in a joint environment. We got all the services represented here, and we also have intel agencies from Naval Intelligence and National Security Agency, and we have law enforcement partners, DEA and HSI. So what's neat about that is we get to learn from each other. We get to have good-natured fun at each other's expense. You know, we mock the Navy because they're the junior sea service to the Coast Guard, and we make fun of some of the other, the Army makes fun of the Air Force, for being the Army Air Corps, stuff like that. Which makes for a fun atmosphere and good interaction. But we also get to learn from each other because we grow up in our own services and we understand things intuitively, and others don't. We get a chance to explain that. So one of those incidents happened recently while actually planning this retirement ceremony. So I'm not going to mention any names, but an unnamed supervisor of Tech Sergeant McAllister, who's also the project officer and the MC for this event, but I'm not going to mention any names, was doing lots of work for this, and really, we owe him a big thanks for bringing all this together, arranging the beautiful weather, the flyovers that were going on earlier. But Tech Sergeant McAllister was like, "Hey, I'd like a flag flown over the USS Arizona as part. I think is it in your shadow box there, or whatever." So that's a pretty typical request. People, want the flat U.S. flag flown over some significant place, and so again, this unnamed person thought that meant let's load the flag in an airplane and fly it over the USS Arizona. And so Tech Sergeant McAllister, training right up to the very end, mentoring people right up to the very end, was able to patiently explain, actually, what we mean we say flying over is there's a flagpole at that ship, that base, whatever, and you go there and you physically haul the flag up, you bring it down, and thus it has been said to fly over there. So thanks for mentoring right up to the end, mentoring up the chain of command even. That's awesome. So we like to play sports at Geoff West. Volleyball in particular is one. I think pre-COVID, Tuesdays and Thursdays. Charles Lee, you were another mainstay there. A bunch of other folks were. I understand that when you joined that, when you first came here, I would say what I hear is anyway, your volleyball skills were Ray Arney tells me they voted you as the most improved player over that time period.
I'm still waiting on my certificate.
What's that?
I'm still waiting on my certificate.
Still waiting on the certificate. Okay, Ray, if you're out there listening in, or anybody else, I don't know that certificate's over there on the table. But I heard from there he's got a little bit of a temper. He's a little bit of an impassioned competitor. Have you seen that side of him, Lisa? Yes. Okay. So yeah, whether it's on the volleyball court, it's like, look, you got to be a little less hard on yourself. Don't expect perfection, and you're still learning there. I heard about during another PT competition, I guess. It wasn't so much a competition, it was just good-natured fun, but pretty heated. Wow, how about that? We're getting a big cargo plane to come down here. Can we get that in the backdrop here somehow? So hopefully you can still hear over that. But yay, Air Force, way to go, way to deliver. So, but apparently there was one in particular where pretty heated. I don't know who the other person was. Maybe you remember that, Chase. And to the point where it was getting very uncomfortable for other people, and they're starting to edge away and kind of like, all right, we're out of here. They fortunately came to their senses and realized we're making a spectacle of ourselves. Then they shifted to arguing who was the nicer guy within the task force between them, and kept arguing, and everyone else left, so no one knows who won the argument. But apparently nice guys do finish last because they were the last ones on the court that day. But who was the nicer guy, you or the other guy?
Remain unnamed, sir.
Remain unnamed. Okay, all right. I guess to close, and this has already been brought up by the chaplain, and I was talking to one of your guests who's here today. In the latter part of his career, Tech Sergeant McAllister became more involved in chapel ministry. Maybe you were doing that before that, but I know in your first time here in Hawaii, you actually were recognized with the Military Outstanding Volunteer Service Medal for that, for your extensive work at the chapel here on base. And then you came back, you continued that work here, and that's actually, as most of you know, that's what he's transitioning to for the next part of his career. And my understanding is the chapel would fall apart pretty much without you there. Is that an exaggeration? Or okay, yeah, because apparently he's singing praise and worship, he's ushering, he's doing technical support, as well as being the mainstay in youth ministry, and now transitioning from being a volunteer there to getting paid for that, which is not a bad deal. So I guess we'll call it you're shifting from serving your country directly, but now you're going to be serving those who serve the country because you're going to be part of the base community here and serving the families that are rotating in and out of here where somebody's often deployed and you're kind of helping the family maybe deal with stress, deal with crises, helping them grow up in a good environment. So I think that's probably one of the best things somebody can do in their life is serving our Lord and helping others grow in their faith. So I'd say congratulations for doing that while you've been on active duty, and best of luck as you transition to that in your next career. So I guess I'll just close with thanks for serving your country. Thanks for being part of our team at JIDF West the last 3 years. Thanks for the impact you've had on your nation, on your, we call them shipmates in the Coast Guard, but your battle mates, your fellow warriors there as you've helped defend them with intelligence, helped defend them with force protection and anti-terrorism information, use the copier in exotic ways, all that kind of thing. And what we'd like to do now is shift to a little bit more formal recognition of what you've done, recognize you, and then retire you, and then let you make some remarks and tell your family all the cool things you've done all these years and let them see what a hero you've been. So, sound good? All right, let's go.
Ladies and gentlemen, we will now be presenting the award of the Joint Service Commendation Medal to Technical Sergeant Charles McAllister. For those in uniform, please rise and remain standing. Attention to award. Technical Sergeant Charles M. McAllister, United States Air Force, has been awarded the Joint Service Commendation Medal. The citation to accompany the award. Technical Sergeant McAllister distinguished himself by exceptionally meritorious service as Collections Manager while assigned to Joint Interagency Task Force West, Headquarters, United States Indo-Pacific Command, Camp Smith, Hawaii, from March 2017 to November 2020. He demonstrated mastery of his intelligence discipline by coordinating national and theater-level collection in support of the task force's missions, contributing to the seizure of 8 metric tons of illicit narcotics worth an estimated $2 billion. He developed tailored collection plans and submitted collection requirements to track over 250 suspect vessels of interest for law enforcement actions. He provided reach-back intelligence support to 11 forward-deployed analysts across the Indo-Pacific and the United States, strengthening information sharing and flow between the task force and its network of law enforcement partners. Technical Sergeant McAllister processed and managed over 220 requests for information, ensuring sufficient intelligence attention to satisfy each requester's operational need and increasing the task force's credibility as a reliable partner of choice. The distinctive accomplishments of Technical Sergeant McAllister culminate a distinguished career in the service of his country and reflect great credit upon himself, the United States Air Force, and the Department of Defense. Signed, Robert P. Hayes, Rear Admiral, United States Coast Guard. Ladies and gentlemen, please remain standing for the reading of Technical Sergeant McAllister's retirement order.
Ready for this? This is it. There's no going back after we read this. You retire. Okay.
Attention. Department of the Air Force, Washington, D.C., Special Orders Number AC 014315. Technical Sergeant McAllister, Charles M. Effective 31 January 2021, you are relieved from active duty, organization, and station of assignment, retired effective 1 February 2021, per Air Force Instruction 36-3203, by order of the Secretary of the Air Force. Technical Sergeant Retired McAllister has also received letters of appreciation from the presidents under whom he has served, as well as certificates and tokens of appreciation from the Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force and his unit. Those items are located on the table here for viewing after the ceremony if you wish. Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. Mrs. Lisa McAllister, please join your husband next to the Admiral for a very special recognition of your personal contributions. At this time, Rear Admiral Hayes will present Mrs. McAllister with the Air Force Certificate of Appreciation. The citation reads, Certificate of Appreciation from the United States Air Force. In grateful appreciation, the United States Air Force presents this certificate of recognition to Lisa Jo McAllister for the commitment and numerous contributions that made positive impacts to the nation's defense. Thank you for the support which gave strength and purpose to your spouse's service. Signed, David L. Goldfein, Chief of Staff of the Air Force. Miss Chloe McAllister, please join your parents next to the Admiral for a very special recognition of your personal contributions. The citation reads, Miss Chloe McAllister, throughout the years of your life you have made sacrifices. Your dad missed so many holidays and countless special occasions, while you were left at home to worry while he was on difficult missions. You had to say goodbye to friends when you moved throughout the years, and you had to change schools. Your resilience and self-confidence throughout those frequent moves gave your dad strength. He is proud of you, for it was your love and support that sustained him in difficult times. Thank you for being there for him. Ladies, you may return to your seats. Technical Sergeant McAllister will now render his final salute as an active member of the Armed Forces to Rear Admiral Hayes. We will now hear from Technical Sergeant retired Charles McAllister.
Oh, let me just breathe a little bit. So you all should know, right off the bat, before I really get to anything, that I am a trained briefer, as you heard the Admiral talk about, by the greatest military fighting force in the world. The ABCs of briefing are accuracy, brevity, and clarity, and they have been my mission for 20 years. So now that I have my final briefing in the military and wasn't giving any left or right boundaries of time, I'm gonna take about an hour. Okay, all kidding aside, thank you so much, Admiral, for presiding over the ceremony. I know your schedule is busy, but I thank you for your leadership over the years. You've made getting to know the people who worked for you a priority. Every one of us mattered to you, regardless of our rank and position. And for that, I thank you. Thank you, Captain McGrath, for narrating today's ceremony. Thank you for being a great boss who took the time to take input from your entire team. And I'm praying that your name is on that major list whenever the Army decides to send it out. Thank you, Captain Lopes, for being the propper today. Your uniform definitely brought this ceremony a little bit more class. While I never worked with you directly, I've seen your leadership in action, and you are an example for others to follow. Thank you, Chaplain Zecker, for dialing in. One thing that I found out this morning, he's actually on the road back from Maine going to Virginia. His wife is driving, though, so he's being nice and safe. We were together the first time the when the McAllister Ohana returned to the island. We were together, and you got to watch as the Lord started moving in our life, and you watched us grow even more into this role. I do need to apologize, though, because currently it's right about 80 degrees here in Hawaii, and I know that you said this morning it was 38 where you're at, so sorry for that. But you know, the islands would always welcome you back if you decide to come back to the islands. I'd also be remiss not to thank the collection management team that's here to help set up today's event and everybody behind the scenes in the task force. For everybody else online and here in person, family, friends, mentors, thank you for taking the time to be here for this time today. It'd be great if we did have one or two more people here, sir. I think your count is probably about right on who would be here. So I do need to read this programming note before I get to my remarks. So warning, this part of the ceremony may cause blurred vision and water to come from your eyes. So grab some tissues if you need them. Okay, another deep breath. To my wife, we've been married for 16 of my 20-year career. You have stood by me through deployments and doing your best to ignore the news as you were asked questions by your friends and families when something would happen wherever I was. You moved our home pretty much by yourself out of Ohio. It was to a lovely place called Hawaii, but it was still tough. Most of all, you've been a fantastic mother to our 11-year-old daughter, Chloe, and I really appreciate that. Our journey together started at Pizza Hut, where you were manager in training, and that's right, I married up. When we had Chloe, you moved from an office job to become a stay-at-home mom, which I think is the toughest job in the world. Through my different schedules and deployments, you continue to raise Chloe through homeschooling, and while doing that, opened an at-home daycare. You truly are my superhero, and I'm thankful that the Lord brought us together, even though neither one of us really knew Him at the time. To my daughter Chloe, you haven't known a life outside the military. You have been through one deployment where you actually realized I wasn't home for a long time. It wasn't like my first deployment where you thought I lived in the TV. You also got to deal with times where I wasn't home overnight and weekends because I was working. I missed out on some of your big moments and events. Now my schedule is more my own. I will have greater flexibility to be with you when you need me to be. Of course, it's not always guaranteed, but my travels will be planned out, and more than not, we will go together and make it our family vacation. My work hours will shift when they need to be, and when I need to come home, 95% of the time, I'll be able to. And to my mom who is here, and my dad who's watching online, I don't know if either of you thought that your son would make a career out of the military. I left home shortly after high school. I was hanging out with the wrong people, mostly. I had some negative influences in my life, and honestly, I don't remember many of them anymore. That's how much impact they had. But you and Dad loved me through it all. This retirement doesn't mean much change for you. Over the last 20 years, coming home has been few and far between, though we tried. But you won't have to worry during deployments anymore. But you will have a reason to vacation to Hawaii from time to time. Over the years, you have seen me grow away from the bad influences to good ones. The biggest one, of course, being Lisa. I think even now, something you nor I expected is that I would be a youth pastor. Following the footsteps of my youth pastor, Howie, though I promise, maybe, to not accept a job where we need to tear down a shed and decide to have a bonfire with the youth group for a non-specific and totally made-up example. And while I was going to take a lot of my comments today and talk about my 20-year career, I will just touch on a few here in my comments. Because really the ceremony is not about me. Sure, it's my retirement, and you've heard a lot about me. But the ceremony is the handing off of the torch to those who will continue to serve and come to serve after me. Today's ceremony is about one mission ending, the mission of the military. The mission to support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America against all enemies, foreign and domestic. This mission called for me to be away from family to Iraq, Afghanistan, South Korea, and Qatar. It called for long 12-hour shifts and getting called in after hours at any hour of the day. Ironically, I would say my career is ending similarly to how it began. My first day of work in the office, like at a desk, as a member of the Air Force, was at United States Strategic Command on 9/11, 2001. America took a big hit that day. Today, as evident by the Admiral and I up here, and most others, we have a different war that we are fighting in America, and history books will let us know how it went. From social injustices, politics, and COVID, we may not be a country at war as we were on my first day at work, but there is an internal strife in our hearts which we are now fighting. So while that mission is coming to a close, a new mission is now my calling: to support and defend what some still refer to as military brats, but I simply call military connected youth, against all enemies, physical and spiritual. It won't look the same, but especially with COVID, all youth, and especially military connected youth, are battling concerns of the world which none of us wants, but must accept. One of the verses I'd like to share from the book of Ephesians, at the end of the book, Paul writes about the armor of God. The armor of God is something we must put on daily to battle against the arrows from the enemy. I think it is even more important now to start putting on the armor as we start battling concepts as self-doubt, loneliness, anger, and resentment that we have seen over these last many months. I don't personally have a set of armor to actually wear, though Christmas is next month, just saying. I don't have a uniform to wear daily. I don't have to decide what to wear. I have to decide what to wear at that point. My new shoes will go from combat boots to slippers. My professional development will be in the Bible and learning from the youth as their cultures and generations change. 20 years ago, I would have never been able to tell you I was going to be a youth pastor, let alone a missionary who depends on mission partners to come and support what I do. My wife told me once that if I told her what I was going to do after the military when we were dating, she would have had some choice words for me and left. But that was before we both handed our lives over to God. So to my friends and family online, you know where to find me. I'll be here on Oahu doing the Lord's work in youth ministry. My mission is to now follow God and let Him guide me completely. I have a vision for what the future looks like, but it could change anytime. It all started with my calling to build my church and was cemented when He provided us a house in military housing to retire in. For the last 2 years, I have been the youth director for Joint Base Pearl Harbor Hickam and enjoying every second of it. I hope many who are either here or virtual are from the youth group because this ceremony will end being about them. This message is about the future. I joined an organization called Youth for Christ and am a missionary with Campus Life Military, the branch that supports military connected youth. Being a missionary in Hawaii could be stressful, but I rely on the Lord for comfort and provision. He has been good and made it clear that this is where we are to stay for the foreseeable future. So with that, I mark the end of my military chapter. And to the Joint Base Pearl Harbor Hickam Chapel staff, some of who are here, and specifically to Campus Life, let's get ready to work. And more than just club and a couple small groups, let's start to do the work. God bless you all. Aloha.
Ladies and gentlemen, the benediction will now be given by Chaplain Zecker.
I know you're about to retire from active service and continue on in service and look forward to serving with your brother for all these many years that are to follow. Now, prepare yourselves for the benediction. May the strength of God sustain us. May the power of God preserve us. May the hands of God protect us. May the way of God direct us. And may the love of God go with us this day. The Lord bless us and keep us. The Lord make His face to shine upon us and be gracious unto us. The Lord lift up His countenance upon us and give us peace this day and forevermore. Amen.
Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes today's ceremony. On behalf of Rear Admiral Hayes, Technical Sergeant retired McAllister and his family, thank you for taking part in this time-honored ceremony.